there, Jessica here with a baklava recipe. This I located on Facebook. It was shared by the food critic and it originated from natasha'skitchen.com. This is the second time that I'm making this recipe, and the reason why is because it was really good the first time. Go ahead and snap a picture or jot down some notes of the ingredients that you're going to need, and do the same for the instructions, or just watch the video and make it along with me. I weighed the walnuts and I went ahead and put those into the food processor and chopped them up. So here we have our ingredients, which includes local honey, freshly squeezed lemons. We have our walnuts with the spices combined, sugar, melted butter, water, and our filo dough that has thawed out at room temperature for several hours. You do want to follow the instructions on the box, so please plan ahead because it does take a while to thaw that dough. So I combined all of the ingredients except for the melted butter, the walnuts, and the filo dough in a saucepan, and I have heated that up on my stove. I'm now letting it sit in the same pan, and it's going to cool off while we start to form our layers. So here we're going to unroll the filo dough. This is paper thin, and when I say paper thin, it's like tissue paper thin. And it's going to be long. It's too long. I'm going to have to trim it down so it fits in our pan here. It's a 13 by 9 pan that I use for brownies. I'm also going to use it for this. I used my basic kitchen shears to begin cutting down the dough, and the kitchen shears cut through the dough just fine. Go ahead and make sure that matches, looks about right. Now we're going to have to butter our pan. Make sure you get the sides really well. We don't want anything to stick. So we're going to add our first sheet. If it starts to stick, just give it a nice little tug, nothing too firm. You don't want to tear it. Now make sure in between each piece of dough that you put on to your pan, you're covering up your dough. I have used a baker's towel. I drenched it and then I wring it out really well, and it's what I'll use every time I'm adding another sheet to the pan. I don't like to leave my dough exposed for more than a second. I'm going to cut down a little bit more. I feel like it's a little too long and I don't want a bunch of the dough piling up at one end of my pan. I like things to be pretty consistent throughout. Gently pull it apart. Place it in your pan and make sure you cover up your dough. So this is my second piece, and I'm going to go ahead and pass forward through some of those so I don't bore you with every single sheet that I put into the pan, because it's about a 20-something minute process. I had to step away from the baklava for just a moment. My Parker House rolls just finished baking, and I had to use the butter to butter the top of them and add a little bit of salt. Anyhow, they're on the cooling rack, and I'm going to continue with the layers of baklava. So the layer process is this: 10 layers of dough, 3/4 cup of the walnuts, 5 layers of dough, 3/4 cups of nuts, 5 more layers of dough, another 3/4 cups of nuts, followed by 10 layers of the dough for the top. If your pieces of dough break or they don't fit, you can just use the cut-off pieces to kind of fill it in. It's not rocket science, you know. It doesn't have to be beautiful either. Just do what you can. Okay, so we just finished with our 10th piece of dough, I'm going to go ahead and add some of the nuts, 3/4 cup. And I like to use my spatula and move the nuts about, and I like to cover the entire area. I like consistency, so when somebody takes a bite of any piece, they get equal amounts of the ingredients. So once I finish spreading this, we're gonna speed things up again. Make sure you preheat your oven to 325 because once you make your layers and your cross cuts, you're gonna wanna bake this in the oven for an hour and 15 minutes. We're nearing the end of all of the steps. 23 minutes later, here we are, we just finished. Um, I have already pulled out of the oven the baked baklava. I somehow lost the clips of me doing the crosscuts and putting it in the oven, so just pretend you saw that. Yeah, so here we are, we're pouring on the sauce. This smells so good, you guys. It's honey, it's lemon, it's oh so satisfying. The sizzle that you hear when you pour it onto the baklava, oh my gosh. So once we're done pouring this on, we're gonna let it sit overnight before we serve it. And tomorrow is Christmas, so Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm gonna serve it. Anybody can have it before we eat dinner or after or both. They can take some home, whatever they want to do. This is gonna be so good. I hope everybody likes it. And please, when you make it, comment and let me know how it turned out. And please share with me your thoughts on the baklava and whether or not you have a recipe that you prefer. And if you do, I'll try and make it. But so far, this one's my favorite. Okay, before I go, I'm going to give you a quick review on this recipe. I would call it a #1 skill level. It's fairly easy to make. You just need your patience. You will need a pastry brush and a 9x13 pan. So if you don't have those items, borrow them, get them, something. And having a food processor makes chopping the walnuts a lot easier than it would any other method. The flavor for this recipe is totally on point. I love it. It's been my favorite baklava recipe compared to all of the baklava that I've had at fancy restaurants. So anyhow, give it a shot. Comment, let me know what you think. If you have a recipe that you prefer over this one, let me know. I'd like to read it and maybe even try to make it myself. Until next time, guys, have a wonderful day.